Commander Zix Trawl of the Galactic Defense Coalition prided himself on running the most secure facility in the known universe TM. Yes, they actually trademarked that phrase, bureaucrats, am I right? Standing atop his command tower on Epsilon 9, his three primary eyes surveyed the sprawling fortress below while his secondary eyes monitored the security feeds. His iridescent scales shimmered with satisfaction as he performed his morning inspection ritual. Another perfectly secured day in paradise, he chittered to his second-in-command, Verthak, whose antenna twitched in agreement. The fortress was, objectively speaking, a paranoid architect's fever dream come to life. Quantum-locked force fields layered 17 deep surrounded the perimeter. Psychic dampeners powerful enough to give a Xanthari hive mind a migraine hummed continuously. Motion sensors so sensitive they could detect a space moth's wing beat covered every square centimeter. And that was just the outer defense layer. The guard force was equally impressive, featuring the most dangerous species the galaxy had to offer. Well, second most dangerous, we'll get to that. Crax-Shi warriors with their armor-piercing mandibles patrolled the grounds. Floating Volux orbs, essentially sentient balls of plasma, monitored the airspace. Even a contingent of Mero hunters, giant feline predators who could smell fear from 3 systems away, stalked the corridors. But the crown jewel of this security nightmare was the anti-Deathworlder defense grid. See, humans had quite the reputation in galactic society. Coming from a planet that tried to kill them in new and exciting ways every day, they'd evolved into what the rest of the galaxy considered walking disaster zones. The stories about them were legendary and mostly true, much to everyone's concern. "Did you hear about what happened on Station K7?" Verthak asked, mandibles clicking nervously. A human sneezed, and their enhanced bacteria ate through 3 bulkheads. "That's nothing," replied Zix Trawl, his scales rippling with anxiety. "My cousin's roommate's spawn sister saw a human lift a Graxlack battle tank because, and I quote, it was in a parking spot." "By the void, how do they even exist?" Verthak shuddered, all 6 of his arms wrapping around himself in a self-comforting hug. The anti-Deathworlder defense grid was specifically designed to handle these walking catastrophes. It included gravity modulators. Humans had this annoying habit of functioning in any gravity, atmosphere scrubbers they could breathe almost anything, and weapon scanners so thorough they could detect a rubber band's potential as a projectile launcher. Which is why when the alert klaxon began blaring, Zix Trawl's scales turned an impressive shade of panic purple. Alert. Alert. Unidentified intruder detected in Sector 7. Species identification human. Weapons detected none. The last word echoed ominously through the command center. Verthak's antenna went completely rigid. "None," he whispered. That's impossible. And terrifying. Mostly terrifying. Zix Trawl's primary heart and both backup hearts started racing. An unarmed human wasn't just unusual, it was unprecedented. And in his experience, unprecedented usually meant he should have taken that desk job his spawn mother had recommended. "Sound the highest alert," he ordered, voice cracking. "And someone get me the incident response manual for Deathworlders. The real one, not the public version that just says pray." Sarah Havoc Chen was having what she considered a perfectly normal Tuesday morning. The fact that she was casually strolling through the galaxy's most secure facility while causing mass panic was, in her humble opinion, everyone else's problem. The security footage showed her just walking. Past defenses that had stopped entire invasion fleets. The quantum-locked force fields? She'd simply found the maintenance access panel and pressed the test mode button. Who even puts a test mode on force fields? The psychic dampeners gave her a slight headache, which she fixed by humming "Never Gonna Give You Up" until they mysteriously shorted out. In the command center, Verthak was watching the footage with increasing hysteria. She's skipping. Who skips in a military installation? Focus Commander Zix Trawl snapped, although his scales had shifted to the rare existential crisis mauve color. "What's our status?" A junior officer, pipsqueak, "Yes, really, their parents were comedians," reported from their console. "Sir, she's already bypassed the Crax-Shi warriors." "Wow, she, offered them cookies, sir. Apparently they're snickerdoodles." The commander's eye stalks drooped. The mighty Crax-Shi, bred for combat, trained in 17 forms of deadly arts, were defeated by baked goods. "To be fair," Sir Pipsqueak added, "they're really good cookies. The warriors are now having what they call a tea party." This triggered a flashback in Verthak's mind to the infamous incident at Beta Centauri, where a human diplomatic mission had gone horribly wrong. Just like the pancake catastrophe of 2184, he whispered in horror. The command staff collectively shuddered. Everyone had heard about that one. A human chef had introduced breakfast foods to the Regelian High Council. The resulting addiction to maple syrup had nearly collapsed their economy. What about the Volux orbs? Zextral demanded, trying to maintain some semblance of control. The security feeds showed Sarah playing what appeared to be an impromptu game of volleyball with the sentient plasma balls. She was winning. The Memaro hunters, then? Surely they. Sir, you might want to see this. Another officer interrupted, bringing up a new feed. The elite feline predators, terror of 17 star systems, were purring. The human had somehow produced a small red dot that she was moving along the wall, and the hunters were utterly transfixed, bouncing off each other in their attempts to catch it. Is that a laser pointer? Verthak asked incredulously. We spent 50,000 credits upgrading their neural enhancement implants, and she defeated them with a 5-credit toy. Meanwhile, Sarah had reached the inner sanctum security checkpoint. The automated system began its scan, identifying subject, species human, threat level calculating, error, threat level exceeds maximum calculable value, switching to backup protocols. The facility's AI, which had previously shown no signs of emotion, somehow managed to sound nervous. Excuse me, honored human, but I am required by my programming to ask, what are your intentions within this facility? Sarah smiled brightly at the nearest camera. Oh, just need to pop in for a quick chat with the commander. Nothing major. The AI paused for what seemed like an eternity in computer time, about 2.3 seconds. I see. And the lack of weapons. Why would I need weapons? She asked, sounding genuinely puzzled. In the command center, that innocent question caused more panic than a battleship's worth of armaments would have. Verthak began stress molting. Sir Pipsqueak reported, their voice reaching previously undiscovered octaves. I've been reviewing human historical records. Did you know they once won a war by Czechs' notes refusing to lose? That's not possible, Zextral protested weakly. You can't just decide not to lose. Tell that to the humans, Pipsqueak replied. They call it the EMU War, although technically they were the ones who. Actually, never mind. I don't think that will help our current situation. The security feeds showed Sarah approaching the final corridor leading to the command center. She'd acquired an escort of thoroughly demoralized security forces who seemed to be there more out of morbid curiosity than any hope of stopping her. She'll be here in approximately 3 minutes, Verthak reported, clutching his lucky probability manipulator, which had started smoking from trying to calculate their odds of survival. Commander Zextral stared at the main doors, his scales cycling through colors faster than a malfunctioning disco ball. In all his years of service, he'd never faced anything like this. Fighting, he could handle. Threats? Part of the job. But an unarmed human who'd disabled their entire security system with cookies, toys, and pop music. New directive he announced to his staff. If anyone needs me, I'll be in my panic room. The one rated for supernovae. Sir Verthak reminded him gently, she's already gotten past the panic room's defenses. She used the ventilation system. How? The vents are too small for any species to crawl through. Sir, humans apparently consider ventilation systems to be an alternative transportation network. They made documentaries about it. They call them action movies. The commander slumped in his chair. Fine. Open a channel to Central Command. Tell them, he paused dramatically, tell them we're about to have a diplomatic incident. With the human menace mere minutes away from the command center, Commander Zextral did what any sensible military leader would do. He deployed everything. And I mean everything. Release the quantum peacekeepers, he ordered, his voice cracking like a teenager at karaoke night. The quantum peacekeepers were the pride of the facility's defense force, highly trained specialists who existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They could attack from any angle, including several that shouldn't technically exist. They surrounded Sarah in a display of multi-dimensional combat prowess that would have made theoretical physicists weep. Sarah sneezed. The quantum fluctuation from that single human sneeze somehow entangled all the peacekeepers together. Now they were stuck sharing the same dimensional space, arguing about whose fault it was while trying to untangle their various appendages from what looked like the universe's most complicated game of Twister. Did she just weaponize a bodily function? Verthak asked, horror and reluctant admiration mixing in his voice. Send in the probability manipulator, Zextral commanded, starting to sound slightly unhinged, and the chaos suppressors, and the reality stabilizers. Sir Pipsqueak interjected. Shouldn't we deploy them one at a time to preserve all of them? The elite units converged on Sarah's position. The probability manipulators began calculating every possible way she could attack, their quantum computers processing quintillions of scenarios per second. The chaos suppressors generated fields designed to impose order on any situation. The reality stabilizers, well, they stabilized reality, which seemed like a good idea at the time. Sarah stopped to retie her shoelace. The probability manipulator systems crashed, trying to determine if this was some sort of elaborate feint. The chaos suppressors, confronted with an entity whose mere existence seemed to generate chaos without effort, had what could only be described as an existential crisis. And the reality stabilizers, upon scanning her probability field, simply displayed error 404 reality not found and shut down. In the command center, the strategic planning session had devolved into increasingly desperate theorizing. Maybe she's carrying a weapon we can't detect, suggested an analyst, like what Verthak asked. Well, according to human historical documents, they once used a weapon called a rubber chicken. The command staff spent 3 precious minutes debating the possible military applications of poultry-shaped rubber before Pipsqueak interrupted with another report. Sir, our xenobiologists have a theory about why she's unarmed. Well, Zixtral demanded, his scales now displaying patterns previously only seen in deep space phenomena. They think she might be the weapon. This sparked a new round of panic as the staff began reviewing human capabilities. The list was terrifying. They could heal from almost any injury, endure extreme temperatures, and generate devastating sonic attacks they called dad jokes. Some could even do advanced mathematics without a computer. What if Verthak proposed, his antenna twisted in distressed knots? What if she's here to tell a pun? The color drained from every alien in the room. They'd all heard about the great pun disaster of 2183, where a human diplomat had caused an entire Volxian council to short-circuit with something called a knock-knock joke. The security feeds showed Sarah now just one corridor away. She'd acquired quite the procession: demoralized guards, malfunctioning robots, dimensional entities still trying to untangle themselves, and several marrow hunters who seemed to have adopted her as their alpha. Sir Pipsqueak reported, their voice trembling. She's humming something. Audio analysis identifies it as the final countdown. A collective groan of despair echoed through the command center. Of course she'd have a soundtrack for this. Humans always did that during what they called the good part. Commander Zixtral made one final, desperate attempt. He activated the facility's ultimate defense system, the temporal displacement field. It was designed to slow time within a localized area, giving defenders crucial extra seconds to prepare. The field engaged successfully, slowing everything in the corridor to a fraction of normal speed. Sarah checked her watch, shrugged, and walked through the time-distorted space, as if it were a light breeze. Verthak whispered. The field generates a temporal distortion factor of 1,000 to 1. According to human records, Pipsqueak offered helpfully, they experience something called Monday mornings, which apparently causes similar temporal distortions. They've evolved to cope with it. The commander slumped in his chair, defeated. So this is how it ends. Not with a bang, but with a human who doesn't even need weapons to defeat us. Actually, Sir Verthak corrected, checking the security feed. She started whistling. I believe it's what humans call the Imperial March. The main doors to the command center began to open. The staff collectively held their breath, those who had breath to hold anyway. Commander Zixtral's scales had settled into a resigned shade of pale terror as Sarah Havoc, Chen, destroyer of defenses, bringer of chaos, and apparent immune to the laws of physics, stepped into the room. She smiled brightly. It was terrifying. The command center was silent enough to hear an electron spin. Sarah Havoc. Chen stood in the doorway, still smiling that unnervingly cheerful smile, while 27 different species of alien tried very hard to look like they weren't contemplating an emergency evacuation through the nearest airlock. Commander Zixtral's scales had settled on a unique shade of terror that theoretical xenobiologists would later dub, "Oh no, purple." He straightened in his chair, trying to project an authority he definitely wasn't feeling. So he managed, his voice only cracking twice. You've penetrated our defenses, disabled our elite forces, and breached our command center. What are your demands? Sarah blinked. Demands? Oh no, I'm just here about the parking ticket. The silence became, if possible, even more silent. The The what Verthak asked, all 6 hands frozen in mid-nervous fidget. The parking ticket, Sarah repeated, pulling out a slightly crumpled citation from her pocket. You guys ticketed my ship last week for being, she checked the ticket, inappropriately positioned in relation to local gravitational vectors. Pipsqueak, showing either incredible bravery or a complete lack of survival instinct, pulled up the records. Ah yes, vehicle registration XH789, cited for parking at a 73-degree angle to the designated gravity well. Standard violation of Station Ordinance 47B, subsection 12. Right, Sarah nodded. But see, I was only parked that way because your gravity generators were miscalibrated. I brought the sensor readings to prove it. She started reaching into her other pocket. Everybody down, someone screamed. 3 different defense systems activated automatically. A junior officer triggered the emergency shield generators. Someone else released the facility's entire supply of emergency containment foam. When the chaos settled and the foam began to dissolve as designed, Sarah was standing in exactly the same spot, now holding a datapad and looking mildly amused. The rest of the command center looked like it had been hit by a combination of a tsunami and a glitter bomb factory explosion. As I was saying, she continued as if nothing had happened. The gravity generators were off by 0.02%. I had to angle my ship that way to compensate, otherwise the plasma manifolds would have misaligned. See, she held up the datapad, which did indeed show a very detailed analysis of gravitational fluctuations. Commander Zix Trawl, now covered in rapidly dissolving foam and looking like a disco ball having an identity crisis, stared at the pad. You broke into the most secure facility in known space. To contest a parking ticket. Well, I tried calling first, Sarah explained reasonably, but your automated system kept transferring me to the Department of Interstellar Cuisine. I spent 2 hours discussing proper soup temperature with someone named Bob before realizing they couldn't help with parking violations. Verthak's antenna twitched. We don't have a Department of Interstellar Cuisine. Really? Ha! Bob had some strong opinions about soup. The commander's scales shifted through several new colors before settling on a shade that suggested his brain was trying to reboot. But why didn't you just pay the 50-credit fine? It's the principle of the thing, Sarah said firmly. Besides, I was in the area. Just had to drop off some cookies at the Regelian embassy. They're absolutely addicted to snickerdoodles since the pancake incident, and thought I'd stop by to clear this up. A security officer who had been reviewing the sensor logs suddenly spoke up. Sir, the cookies she gave the crack she warriors, they're just cookies. Regular, non-weaponized baked goods. The laser pointer for the MRO hunters is from a dollar store, added another analyst. And the song that disrupted our psychic dampeners. It's just a popular human music video from their primitive internet era. Commander Zix Trawl looked like he was having trouble processing this information, but our defenses, the quantum peacekeepers, the reality stabilizers. Oh, sorry about the peacekeepers, Sarah said. I have allergies. Spring pollen, you know. But they seem to be having fun now. She gestured to where the multidimensional beings had given up on untangling themselves and were now apparently trying to set a record for most dimensions occupied during a game of charades. And the temporal displacement field, Verthak asked weakly. Is that what that was? I thought it was just lag, you know, like bad internet connection. Speaking of which, your Wi-Fi password could really use an update. Galactic Defense 123 isn't very secure. You accessed our network, Pip squeaked. Well, I needed to check my email while your security systems were scanning me. Did you know they run 17 different types of scans? Seems a bit excessive. Though I did enjoy the one that plays music, very considerate of you to entertain visitors during the security check. Commander Zix Trawl, who had been staring into space with the 1,000-yard stare of someone whose entire worldview was crumbling, finally found his voice. So, you're saying, all of this, the panic, the chaos, the system failures, was mostly you guys overthinking things, Sarah finished cheerfully. I mean, the ventilation system thing was just because I took a wrong turn. Your signs really aren't very clear. Though I did meet some lovely dust bunnies up there, very philosophical bunch. The dust bunnies. Our sentient Verthak asked faintly. Oh no, I was just bored waiting for your scan to finish. Made up little stories about them. Named one Frederick. He wants to be a dancer. The command staff looked at each other, then at their supposedly impregnable defenses, then at the human who had casually walked through them all while making up stories about dust bunnies. Commander Zix Trawl did the only thing he could do. He reached for his stamp, marked void across the parking ticket, and handed it back to Sarah with trembling hands. "Thank you," she beamed. "Oh, and you might want to update your systems. I noticed your quantum encryption is running on last year's algorithms. Also, the coffee machine in Sector 7 is actually a sentient AI trying to take over the facility through strategic caffeine distribution. Nice guy, though. We had a lovely chat about the proper way to brew Earl Grey." As Sarah Havoc Chen left the command center after giving the MRO hunters one last belly rub and promising to bring more cookies next time she visited, the facility's staff began the arduous process of piecing together their dignity in their security systems and their understanding of reality itself. "You know," Verthak mused, watching her departure on the security feeds, "maybe we've been overthinking this whole Deathworlder thing." Overthinking. Commander Zixtral's scales flickered between traumatized lavender and existential crisis blue. She defeated our entire security system by accident, while looking for parking enforcement. "To be fair," Sir Pip Squeak offered, "our automated phone system is pretty terrible. Last week it transferred me to something called Buddha's Pizza and Enlightenment when I was trying to reach maintenance." The commander was about to respond when an urgent message flashed across his screen. His eyes widened as he read it. Then he began laughing hysterically. Sir Verthak asked cautiously, "Are you having what humans call a nervous breakdown?" Central Command just finished their investigation of the gravity generator calibration. Zixtral wheezed between laughs. It turns out she was right. It was off by exactly 0.02%. So, the ticket was invalid. "Oh, it gets better," the commander continued, wiping tears from his primary eyes. "They're implementing new standardized parking protocols based on her sensor readings." Apparently, she wrote a comprehensive report on gravitational harmonics while waiting for our security scans to finish. The Academy of Sciences is calling it revolutionary. She wrote a scientific paper, while our systems were scanning her. For fun, Pip Squeak's voice had reached a pitch previously achievable only by quantum particles. And Zixtral added, checking another message, "The quantum peacekeepers want to know when she's coming back. Apparently their interdimensional charades tournament was, and I quote, the most fun we've had in 17 dimensions." The command staff looked out at their facility. The Craxshi warriors were organizing a baking club. The Volx orbs had developed a new form of plasma-based volleyball. The reality stabilizers had gained sentience, and were now having philosophical debates with the coffee machine about free will. "Should we," Verthak suggested hesitantly, "maybe update our first contact protocols?" "Update them to what?" the commander asked. "Don't panic. When humans ignore our defenses, they're probably just there to file paperwork." Well, it would have saved us some embarrassment today. Just then, another alert flashed across their screens. A different human ship was approaching the station. "Oh no," Zixtral moaned. "What now?" "Another parking ticket, a complaint about the cafeteria menu, a critique of our interior design." The message from the approaching ship appeared. "Hey there. Heard you guys have great coffee. Mind if I pop in for a cup? Promise not to accidentally reorganize your defense grid or anything, unless you want me to." The commander stared at the message for a long moment, then reached for the station-wide comm. "Attention all personnel. Implement new protocol H1, stop overthinking it, and somebody please make sure the coffee machine isn't planning a revolution." As the staff scrambled to prepare for their newest visitor, a final message came through from Sarah Chen. "By the way, those dust bunnies in your ventilation system? Frederick really is planning a dance recital. Might want to get maintenance to check that out. P.S. Thanks for the inspiration. Just submitted my doctoral thesis, Quantum Entanglement and Administrative Bureaucracy. A case study in parking enforcement. Your security footage was super helpful." Commander Zixtral looked at his newly voided parking ticket, then at the chaos of his command center, and finally at the approaching human ship. "You know what?" he announced to no one in particular, "I'm taking that desk job. And someone please tell Bob from the non-existent cuisine department that soup should never be that temperature." Somewhere in the station's ventilation system, a dust bunny named Frederick practiced his pirouettes and dreamed of Broadway. The galaxy would never be the same, but at least the parking regulations would be properly calibrated,